Talk Shoe. Recorded live.
Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we continue our retrospective of the Phantasm series with 1994's Phantasm 3, directed by Don Coscarelli. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be talking about it from the perspective of horror fans who have, so warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, creator of the Alex Van Helsing novels. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer of the band Deserts of Mars and tech director for Rooster Teeth Studios, makers of Ruby. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin is Drew Edwards, writer for Rockabilly Online and HorrorMovies.net, and creator and writer of the long-running comic Halloween Man. Say hello.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back. And finally, also in Austin, Jamie Barr is a musician, pinup model, educator, and the lead vocalist and upright bassist for Austin's premier all-female rock and roll band, Danger Cakes. And you can find out about their latest shows and their album, Quarter Life Crisis, at www.dangercakes.net. Say hello and welcome back.
Hello and welcome back.
Ha
ha ha.
Excellent. Gracie Allen lives. Okay, according to Wikipedia, Phantasm 3, Lord of the Dead is a 1994 horror film and the second sequel to Phantasm, also written and directed by Don Coscarelli. The film stars Angus Scrimm as the Tall Man, Reggie Bannister as Reggie, and A. Michael Baldwin as Mike. According to Reggie Bannister, Universal Studios refused to theatrically distribute this film due to some conflict or another they were having with Coscarelli. The film instead came out direct-to-video. I have no doubt it played on a big screen somewhere in this world because that's how these things work. In 1996, the LA Times reported that Phantasm 3 was one of the top 100 highest-grossing selling direct-to-video titles. So let's get our opening thoughts. And you know what? I think that we should mix it up. Tony, I know that this is your beloved series, but you also the last
totally cool.
two. So I think let's go Jamie, Drew. Tony can explain, if it hadn't been at that point, why the heck we are watching this movie, and then I'll say whatever. So Jamie, about a minute, opening thoughts, Phantasm 3.
I enjoyed this movie. I actually was surprised. I wasn't the biggest fan of 2, and I thought 1 was pretty weird and out there, but I still I liked it. But this one, I don't know. I liked it. I definitely liked it more than 2. They bring back Mike from the first one for like half the movie, but I like what they did. I like it was more forward minded. I know it's a little later. It's in the 90s, but I like the fact that one of the side characters is a black woman. She's strong and she's proud and she's gonna kick some ass, and I love that. And yeah, I've had a good time with this movie. I enjoyed it.
Excellent. Drew, what are your thoughts? Phantasm 3.
Out of the Phantasm movies, the latter 2 sequels are not the ones that I tend to revisit. I watch 1 and 2. Like kind of every few years. So I'd forgotten more about this movie than I actually remembered about it. And the thing I now having kind of watched these back to back, what I find about this movie is this was their attempt to reconcile the what the fuckness of the first movie with the what the hellness of the second movie. And that's my
what do you mean by the what the hellness of the second movie?
The grotesque, the sort of grotesque, visceral, sort of grand guignol splatter of the second movie. But it's got that sort of cerebral, dreamlike quality that the first one has at times. So it's like they blended the sensibilities, and I think it does a fairly. It's not perfect. I mean, I think I still like the first 2 better, but it does a fairly good job of, like, this is what a Phantasm movie is. Like, if you were to take all of what, like, the ideas and the icons of Phantasm, this really kind of has it all. That being said, I don't think the Tall Man is as scary in this movie. I think we learn a little bit too much about him, and for some reason that makes him less frightening to me.
Interesting. Very cool. Tony, Phantasm 3, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I ended up enjoying it more than I remembered, actually. Like, it's weird because it's the straightforward parts are way more straightforward, and the off-the-wall parts are even more off the wall.
Yeah.
So it makes a weird balance where it's kind of almost back to 2, but, like, it's pretty streamlined overall. And in the same way that 2 was a very 80s movie, this is a very 90s movie. For
maybe every decade gets the Phantasm it deserves.
Yeah, I think so. And I really like the characters I'd forgotten. How much I liked them. There's some really great bits, and I think the effects hold up really well. Also, remind me, there's a really great story I learned at the Phantasm Fest about the hearse jump, which is insane, and should not have been that insane. There's a really good story about that. But,
yes, remember that.
I
love that
really
figure.
like all the how it's all put together. I'm kind of with Drew. I think we may learn a little bit much. I mean, we learn even more. It gets really weird in 4. It's 4 is a rougher movie than this as far as it's kind of more rough around the edges than this one. This one's pretty slick. It's got some great gore, some great bits, lots of cool action. The bits they do is bringing the actors back from 1. I think that's really cool as well. Reggie stays Reggie, true and true. I don't know how much Reggie, the actor, is in Reggie the character, but in the same way that Ash is Ash, Reggie's always Reggie, perpetually, he's a middle-aged, cool dude, wants to get with chicks, and wants to, fight when he can. He'll fight to the bitter end, and he's that to a fault. So I like all of that.
Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, I actually thought my feeling is that I did like this movie better than number 2 for whatever reason, but I also found I wish somebody would write a really good essay on this or a thought piece because I think there's a thing that happens in horror movie series where the original horror movie is often a kind of a thinky, mystery, surreal thing. If we think about, take a movie that doesn't have a sequel, like Daughters of Darkness, the Belgian movie with the creepy vampire lady, and
sure.
That's her reveal, and she seduces the young couple and kills them. If it were to become a sequel, you would introduce kind of a hero character, and you'd start to set up tropes, and all that stuff that's mysterious would become hard, and then or become hardened, and then that's what happens here. And the extent to which it works is the extent to which you're willing to just go, okay, the first movie had its tone, but if this is going to be a series, it has to be more like number 2. And I agree with you. I think that this one is even more number 2 than number 2. It's
right.
It's got all the action, and it's still got the dreamy stuff that kind of is sort of a trademark of Phantasm. But the movie itself is not a mystery dream. The movie is an adventure, and that's great. I mean, I actually really do.
I would actually say this one actually veers into being. Actually, Jamie said it while we were watching, is this one almost veers into being a Mad Max movie.
Yeah.
There's a lot of Mad Max. There's also a lot of standiness to it. There's I'm trying to think what culturally is going on at the time, and we should actually.
Well, Tony hit the nail on the head. It's the millennial fever that was hitting in the 90s. The apocalypse was on everybody's mind, and who better to bring about the end of the world than Angus Scrimm?
I will say that two major things pop out, and then we should go straight into this movie. First, the tall man has way better accoutrement than he did before. He's got a rocking throne room. His throne room is one of the coolest things ever.
I love that.
Any Dracula or Vandal Savage or any bad dude would be happy to have this throne room for sure. And the other one, I'm gonna leave the other one because we'll get to it in a sec. But they basically took every like little idea that they had before, and they sort of figured out many variations. Like there's a benefit to taking nearly a decade between each of these movies because it gets them. They can sit around going, what else could you do with a silver ball? What other creative?
I thought that was so cute. Like I know Drew was like, what?
Little eyeball.
The ball with a little brain. Like he's all like, oh, and he like pets the brain, and I was like, I don't know why. I was like, oh.
I really just wish that the brain was like
looked
purr.
at me.
My wife,
I wanted it to like make a ooh noise or something like that. Like I thought it was kind of cute.
Little tribble. Yeah.
I mean, the eyeball was a little weird, but even that, it kind of reminded me of Flight of the Aviator. Do you remember that movie? What's
Flight of the Navigator.
Not Flight of the Aviator. Flight of the Navigator. Thanks, Drew. That Disney movie, and but it, I just thought that it kind of at first endeared me. I was like, oh, well, not at first. I was a little put off, and not put off, I shouldn't say by it, but the only female there's 2 female characters from the sequel, and apparently neither one gets to come back because poor Alchemy gets her face eaten off.
That wasn't Alchemy. That was Alchemy was the zombie.
Alchemy was the zombie. So I'm sorry. What was her? That's
Liz.
I don't remember the blonde girl's
What was her name? She was the main
Liz,
girlfriend. Liz?
Yeah.
Is it Liz?
Yes.
Liz. So Liz gets her face eaten off. And they show it. I was like, oh, man.
Yeah,
Poor
no,
Liz.
it's pretty harsh.
Poor Liz.
Yeah.
But,
in fact, that's the beginning. We should talk about that. So we start right there with a recap of the first movie. That
Reggie's alive. I was pleasantly surprised. I thought Reggie had died in the sequel.
Right. Well, I mean, just like before, we realized that every one of these movies is going to end with the apparent demise of the main characters, and then we're going to have to get to the next one to figure out, like, whether, in fact, we read the scene correctly or who's coming back. But, yeah, we open with the fight that looked like the death of the main characters before. Liz, indeed, is gone. Reggie's back. Everybody is inexplicably, 6 years older. Reggie's looking good, actually.
Reggie looks the same. I thought Reggie has aged well.
Oh, no, I think he's aged well, but I think he's looking stronger. He's looking a little trimmer. His hair is a little more silver overall. He's looking more like a veteran of the roads. And you have to imagine the characters at this point have literally been riding the roads for 10 years, fighting tall man ephemera. And when Mike is thrown free, when he gets up, he has a different face. Again, he actually has the original face. Right. Plus 10 years.
Which I think, because it's kind of a nod, like, hey, Mike's back. It's been this amount of time.
Yes.
So that's
what makes you really.
I thought that was a nice
passing.
Yeah, I thought that was a nice and we're off kind of thing. Once you see original Mike, and he's fully there, that's where you're like, okay, here's the ride we're giving you now. So.
Well, the great thing about having these original actors is that it makes it much cooler to be able to do these flashbacks. At least at the beginning, showing the same, and throughout the film occasionally, showing the actors younger. It's just rare that you get to see the same actor in a role across that much time. I mean, I can't think of anybody short of Luke Skywalker who's stretched farther.
I just watched an episode of Fuller House. I'm just gonna say that. I did.
I'm surprised.
I shouldn't have admitted that, but I did.
You're right. John Stamos is always an exception to almost any role, honestly. Rory Laughlin as well. Okay, so one thing, we meet the tall man in this opening scene. Now, the tall man has been allowed to age, and they don't even hide it. Because the tall man in the first film had black hair with, lots of creeping white, lots of creeping, gray. But his hair was dark. And here, his hair has gone almost completely white. There is no explanation whatsoever for the aging of the tall man.
Well, there's barely any explanation. I mean, they explain it later how it works, but there's barely any explanation on why he's not dead.
I love how he's like, oh, by the way, I wasn't burnt. That was another tall man. My tall man.
Yeah.
Like right, I love his like, this is inconvenient. I'm chucking this into the void. Like,
right, he changes bodies.
That. Yeah. It's awesome.
Never has a film franchise been so committed to confusing the hell out of its fan base as this one.
I am convinced that if I think about this hard enough, Drew, I can make all of this make sense. I mean,
good luck. Good luck.
I think, whatever entity controls the tall man in the other dimension realizes that the tall man's body is dead and says, hey, tall man, get on over there to Earth because you need to keep doing your work and your body has been destroyed. And so through the portal he comes. Like Tony says, he picks up the dead body and chucks it back through the portal, where I presume it just sort of falls.
Yeah, this angers me. I'm really unhappy. This is inconvenient. I'm back.
And now he's
great.
back.
I love his expression, too, man. He's just, like, taking care of business. That's all he does. It's so
I have to say, like, you talking about him looking older. It's because the older that Angus Scrimm looks, the more frightening he becomes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
he looks great.
He looks scarier. Like, I don't think my problems with this is that I feel like he learned too much, and he essentially becomes, by the end of the movie, it's like a ladder, Hammer Dracula, where it's just like, this is the way we're going to kill Dracula this episode. And, there's that vibe to it, which is fine. It's still enjoyable. But, like, in the first two, the tall man is so terrifying. And I can say that as, like, a 37-year-old man. I didn't really feel that here, although I do think he's still a great villain.
Well, I will say, when I saw them, and they showed all four, so he'd made the fourth one, like, in person, you could tell he was an older dude. Like, he was a little, like, it's kind of weird. Like, he was pretty spry, I think, the second time. The first time I saw him, I was like, oh, I'm a little worried about the tall man. Like, but, so it was kind of strange. So I think, that's a factor, definitely. But I don't know, man. He still does a lot of stuff in this that's pretty damn scary.
Yeah. No, I mean, when he died, he was 89, right? So when you saw him, he was probably, like, close to that, like 87 or something.
No, that was long. It was a long time ago.
Oh, was it?
Oh,
I thought it was just a couple of years ago.
That was the Colorado Draft House. Like, it was still when, I mean, I don't know why you couldn't go, but, like, it was the Draft House around the time Weird Wednesdays was kicking off,
Huh. Well, I apologize then.
That'd be what, like I want to say, like 99, 2000, something like that.
Oh, okay. Well, then
early days of the Draft House, put it that way. I'd have to look it up. I need to scan that poster so I can put it on our page for the retrospective.
Oh,
take a photo of it. I got to find it since it's packed up. But
they
did a great job. Like Stephen Romano, shout out to Stephen Romano, because he was doing all kinds of stuff around that time, and he's still doing stuff for like Dread Central, and like I posted and everything, and he was a big factor in getting all that together too. So really, really great guy. He did a lot for horror. Still does a lot for horror. So.
Well, he's the one who wrote those articles that you guys have been saying are really good.
I'm sure if you saw a picture of him, I'm sure you'd remember, because he was at a lot of the stuff we were at all the time. Yeah.
So as you guys mentioned, when we meet the tall man, there's a couple things that they introduce to us right away. First, I have to point out that first we find out the Jawas. Now, I'm just going to keep calling them Jawas because I've been calling them.
I don't think anybody doesn't. Like like I said before,
Jawas,
you're totally safe with that.
Their faces are more animated now. And faster moving. In other words, they've got better faces, but they also are much faster. I mean, they sort of monkey around the trees and jump and spring, and there's a cleverness to the Jaws that we haven't seen before, and that's neat, and that's sort of in keeping with this sort of gonzo action horror idea that's going on in the film. The other is the thing that Jamie was talking about, where Tall Man now reveals to us that these spheres, the spheres which we saw flying around in the mausoleum so far, apparently each of them has a brain in it. Each of them. So if I understand correctly, everybody that he kills and turns into a dwarf minion, he takes the brain out of their body and he puts the brain into a sphere where it acts essentially as an engine for the sphere. So that's interesting at the very least. And that explains...
It's kind of like a baby Dalek.
What was that?
I said it kind of reminded me of like a little baby Dalek.
Yes,
like,
yes. It is very Dalek-like. That's right. You know, or anything like that where you've got a brain encased in a body, and the personality is not supposed to come through. But we find out. Yeah. But one of them does, which is Jody. But I think that will come up later. So right away, as soon as that opening fight is over with, our heroes start heading off across.
Mike is in a coma.
Yeah, I forgot. There's one more thing with the sphere that we find out, which is that sometimes also spheres, which have miniaturized brains in them, spheres can also act as puppet masters and can control a body, because Mike is in a coma ever since the accident, and we meet yet another kind of minion, which is a zombie. Drew, you want to explain to us?
Mike goes into a coma, and he has a weird, trippy, yet very 90s. What was that, baby?
The go into the light dream.
Yeah, go into the light dream. It's like, you know, again, this sort of attempt to recapture some of the dreaminess of the first one, but it's in its own 90s raver kind of way. So he has this vision of his brother who's telling him that he doesn't want the Tall Man to get him, and then the Tall Man appears in this vision, and then he wakes up. And then the doctor, who had been previously, you know, taking care of him, this normal doctor,
nurse,
is now a normal, a monstrous, zombified woman who's attacking him with a drill. Yeah. And Reggie shows up, and they, attack it and manage to kill it, and then a silver ball pops out of the side of the head.
Yeah.
And so we now know that these zombies have the spheres in the heads.
Yeah, the spheres can be used presumably by the Tall Man to ambulate dead bodies, which is pretty cool, and control them and make them rage.
And I have to say that zombified doctor to me was probably the scariest thing in the movie. Like she is so gross.
Oh, she's great. Oh yeah. No, she is terrifying. The ghoul nurse, as I called her. Yes.
Yeah. I love, Drew. I'm just gonna say I love how forward-minded you're thinking, because I thought she was a nurse too. I'm sure she is actually a nurse, but I love that you're calling her a doctor.
She's not a nurse though. But there is two nurses in the scene, and actually I was listening to the commentary on this.
She's not
one
a nurse?
of them is. I don't know if she's a nurse.
I'm so sorry.
I took her as a doctor. I
can totally dig that. No problem.
But there are two nurses in the waiting room, and actually I learned from the commentary, one of them is A. Michael Baldwin's wife, and the other woman is the woman in lavender from the first movie, who Angus Scrimm actually mentions that she started one of the first burlesque revival troops in San Francisco, which I thought was an interesting little bit of trivia.
That's really sweet. Okay, so they escape from. So that's amazing. And by the way, the effects that they do of these at various times when these silver spheres have to come out of flesh always looks really, really shocking and cool. And we are like millions of miles away from the first movie when it comes to stuff like that. You know, where the first movie never attempted anything like that. They did do the one drill, effect, but generally, I mean, well, okay, there were some things actually, come to think of it, like the chopped off fingers and stuff. But this is just many, many orders of magnitude more technically adept.
And the chopped off hands were great.
Oh yeah.
This time around, that was awesome.
Man. Yeah, well, I mean, we're going to get a callback to the bug when they go camping in a few scenes. So right after they escape from the ghoul nurse, we now cut to a sort of cabin in the middle of nowhere where Reggie and Mike are, I guess, holing up together, and they go traveling. Now, what I'm trying to remember.
Well, no, that Jody reveals, like Jody is somehow in the room, and he reveals that
and he's
he's like,
is this the point where he just? How does Mike end up separating them? I'm trying to remember why.
The tall man. He says the tall man's locked on to me. I don't want him to do what he did to me. And they're like, what do you mean, Jody? What do you mean? And then he turns into one of the balls. Yeah, because the tall man basically just has a portable portal. Basically, he can just create a portal. And then the tall man shows up and he says, "It's time to come home, boy," and knocks Mike out and drags him through the portal. And that's when Reggie Solo, who now actually becomes essentially the main character of the movie for a good portion of the time, starts tracking down the tall man in the restored Himikuda, which makes everybody say hooray. But he's riding in that Cuda. What I love about this is the towns that he's going through have all been eaten by the tall man, basically. And I know that I'm not reading too much bullshit into this to say that Coscarelli is showing us a vision of America that has been eaten alive by exploitation. I know that this is something that he wants to show us because it seems to be a theme in some of these other movies, and he goes from town to town and he goes to these burned out, dead little main streets, and I think that's his vision. And so you guys said it was what did you call it, Jamie? You said it was like Mad Max.
I said it's very post-apocalyptic, but it is very Mad Max in the way, like the driving around, and even like, I mean, some of the costuming maybe just because it's 90s. But like there's the characters that drive the pink hearse. The woman who's going through the other person's car, and she gets up, and you're like, I don't know if she's supposed to look like a biker chick, a prostitute, or a member of CNC Music Factory. like she's like, I got the power and the keys to this car, and comes on to Reggie, and boom, he gets knocked out, put in the car, he gets a little swindled, and saved by that kid
because he's looking at her ass too much. I mean, Reggie's worst, weakness is literally his weakness, is that he's just too busy, like, chasing tail. No matter what the odds are, no matter what else is going on.
Reggie has really good self-esteem, though, that he thinks that these women are going to be interested in him. I asked that you. So while his lecherousness is regrettable at times, kudos to him for being a middle-aged man with such good image.
Yeah, it's self-esteem / perseverance. Like it is like a little bit like when you watch
perseverance / sexual harassment.
Yeah, well, that too. Like definitely. Like you watch it and you're kind of like, oh, I'm kind of ashamed of my uncle right now. Like he got kind of drunk and he's,
no means no, Reggie.
Come on. And she,
no means no.
All of that where he's just a constant like, hey, baby, come on. Well, I mean, you could do worse than Reggie. Like, basically the whole time, like, no matter what. You're like,
His best line in the
kind of
movie,
this-
ever try vanilla? Like, really?
Oh, my God.
I couldn't even believe it. I was like, oh, my God.
Yeah.
Reggie is the spirit of the 1970s fighting his way through the 80s and 90s.
Hell yeah, that's true. But I can identify with that.
He's very much like kind of a Boomhauer kind of character. Like, there's an episode of King of the Hill where you find out that it's like you think Boomhauer is like just getting all these women, but then you see that it's just law of averages.
Right.
Like, he's getting
He hits
slapped
on literally
constantly.
every woman.
Yeah, and so and it's like the kind of curtains pulled back, and this Reggie's just kind of, hey man, you can't get it if you don't try. Like the whole time, which I'm not saying that's by no means is that admirable, but it's in this, like I said, in the same way that Ash is always Ash, Reggie is always Reggie in these movies.
Well, he's a hero, but he's also kind of an anti-hero. I think I said it in the last one. He's like the least Hollywood action hero of all time because he's a middle-aged ice cream vendor who boosts weapons from stores, which is like never in a like he steals stuff and.
Well, they left money. Hey, they left money in that store.
Okay, but that's still a little ethically questionable.
So what I like is they actually pulled the ice cream part back into this one. Like it became a thing. The fact that it was the ice cream
a point of continuity.
Became like a point of continuity. Like, you remember when the tall man was close to the ice cream truck and he hated the cold?
He bring near the ice cream truck. Yes.
It's so bizarre. I also love the kids like Road Warrior / Home Alone.
I wonder if that was a commentary on Home Alone. Like I completely forgotten about this, and that whole scene, it plays like Home Alone meets Hellraiser.
Yeah.
So that
with a frisbee that's an ersatz like boomerang from Road Warrior.
Well, okay. So there's the Stand here a little bit, although this is contemporaneous with the Stand. But I think like I was getting a major vibe when Reggie comes across that first the gang that robs him basically by having a pretty woman and he's looking at her ass and then they pull a gun on him and whatever. That and they stick him in the back of their pink hearse. That felt very much like the scene in the Stand when Nick comes across the psycho girl. But then when they get to the house, the way he ditches that crew is because this kid ends up murdering them, which is fascinating to me. I mean, it's this boy that they introduce. This, I think he's Tim. He is like Home Alone, except for that if it got really real. I mean,
exactly.
Because they're
like Lord of the Fly kids.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the gang is something straight out of like Walker, Texas Ranger, because you got the guy with the mustache, and you got this sort of like beefcake dude who seems like a sweet enough guy who basically hangs out at the gym all the time.
And he really, really, really looks up the Flavor Flav with his choice of next.
Yeah.
Right. And then you've got the guy with the groovy mustache, and they're bad people, okay? Straight up bad people. Any hero in these movies could kill them, and we won't care. So
I'm going to interrupt you for 1 second, Drew. You said the Flavor Flav reference, but I believe it was Marky Ramone who actually wore a dollar sign.
Okay.
Oh, man. Wow.
Yeah. Just saying.
That's fantastic, though.
That's true.
Not Marky.
No.
Dee Dee. It was Dee Dee Ramone. When he did his
Another way of
That's
thinking
true. That's true. Flavor Flav wore a clock. I stand corrected.
But the idea of a medallion, that medallion has like no meaning, though. To the costumers here, it's just, hey, people who are fashionable wear medallions. Here's a medallion here.
Hey, it's the 90s, and we're going to wear big chains and really
what's so
ridiculous.
Crazy. Yeah, no one was wearing
symbols.
this shit in 1994. That's crazy.
That was Vanilla Ice. Like it was like the rapper look of the time, like that R&B and.
But I'm going to get you second. That was
on.
like 1987. I'm just saying that these fashions are just a little like 6 or 7 years out of date and filtered through the vision of some, like, I don't know, definitely non-street costume designers who just are sort of putting together some. That's why I say it's like something off of Walker, Texas Ranger. But it doesn't matter because they're dangerous, so it's fine.
Right.
You know, they're so Mike. But I called him Mike. Tim is like Mike TV from Willy Wonka. You know, the one who's like got the gun on the holster, except for he's like shooting people and like
he's a stone cold killer, man. You know,
like got
he
booby traps.
He throws it. He embeds a tomahawk into the girl's head, like
rather nonchalantly.
Yeah, like
he shoots that one guy in a hole at point blank range. He's just like boom, boom. That's it.
Yep.
Took care of that guy.
He's actually, when you think about it, he's more of a badass. Than Reggie in some ways.
Yes.
Oh, in ways. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he saves Reggie multiple times.
Yeah, Reggie's good with that shotgun that he has, but this guy is extremely resilient with a lot of weapons, including
the
like
4-barrel shotgun.
Oh, I mean, but Tim, or as I called him, Mike TV. Tim has a razor frisbee that he's made, like just with ingenuity, and he uses it to cut a guy's neck from. And it's clever. It's very Last of the Mohicans because he's like, I can't remember what he says, but it comes down to take your best shot, and the guy shoots at him, and of course misses because it's very difficult to aim a .357 Magnum. And meanwhile, the kid just cuts his throat from across the field with his frisbee. And after he dispatches that gang is when he rescues Reggie and becomes the mentor of this movie because he's the one who lays down the rules about who's in this town and what's going on. This is the most upside-down, crazy kind of thing I've ever seen in a movie where the person playing the mentor role is a 9-year-old or whatever.
The thing.
Obviously, you haven't seen Curly Sue.
Right.
The thing about these movies as a whole, the series as a whole, I say the phrase weird movies for weird people. Yeah. I don't think that any movies typify that better than maybe this series, because these are really freaking strange. Like, it's just weird ideas, weird imagery, like they don't even really ever blatant continuity errors. They don't care. They'll explain that all away just by saying never trust what you see.
So, and then they take it a step further. So you have a kid who's in the tradition of like the later Godzilla movies, or certainly Gamera movies, where the kids know more than any adult ever.
Yeah.
You then meet a couple of like badass black ladies.
Very next scene. Yeah, very next scene. They're at a mausoleum. Go ahead.
Who are totally have like been going also from town to town, evidently. One of them gets hit by one of the balls, and then the other one is like super, like she's got the Grace Jones haircut. She can use nunchucks.
She can use the nunchucks. Yeah.
And she was trained by the military. That's why they were military garb. Again, Reggie's downfall is women. That seems to be his whole story arc in this, for the most part. It's a constant being Reggie thing. But there's a great bit with the ball, and it kind of does the classic thing that it does, where it hits somebody exactly like in the first one, and then they start traveling together. But that's and she's pretty badass. The throwaway line of like how she decides on nunchucks is kind of funny because why not?
I don't remember. What was the nunchucks?
She says something about the military, and the nunchucks are just basically that's
nobody
her
can get
weapon
close.
of choices. Yeah, like
to keep them. She knows how to fight someone, but the nunchucks keep them. So she doesn't have to actually get that close.
Yeah, and all of that is great. And
Jamie mentioned how Rocky, this character is named Rocky, is kind of a progressive character, and she is, especially with her being, African American, and she's very much kind of like a post, Alien, post Terminator kind of heroine. But the thing I actually, with looking back at this, the fact that that Reggie is interested in her and that there's that interracial element, which back in the 90s was still kind of taboo.
Yeah, and also, I think it's also cool that she's informed by, tons of, like Pam Grier movies and stuff like that. Like she, that's his character, that kind of character, even like stuff like Sister Street Fighter. Characters like that. Like,
the other
now
thing
she's in a horror movie too, and she encompasses all that. I think that's really rad.
And she leaves at the end. That's the thing.
Yeah,
I
that
think
was the thing I kept
better.
saying too. It's like she doesn't fall victim to the trope,
Yeah, she doesn't get killed. In other words, or
yeah,
she doesn't get killed.
Yes,
she doesn't
she's a
end
black
up with
character
Reggie.
that does, right. She doesn't like the only time that there's like the love scene. It's him in his dream, which I kind of felt like that was my only thing. I was like, of course, they have to have some boobs in the movie, so let's take the only character who has them and make her be, that part actually kind of bothered me because it's like, I understand you're supposed to be in his brain, but, like, I don't know, she was supposed to be so strong, and I feel like it bothered me. It felt like, because I was like, damn it, Reggie, she said no. Like, no means no. Like, that's not me, not now. Like, I, as a woman, I didn't want to think of Reggie, like, being so much of a hornball about
in
her.
Subconscious?
It just bothered me. It bothered me. And then I was mad at the director for for having her be exposed. Like, that just bothered me.
I think your anger is well placed. We don't need to see her breasts, and it does seem a little bit exploitative that the character doesn't want to have sex with this guy, but because we need to get the rating properly, and we need to be able to get that in the little package description that'll come on on HBO. We've got to have nudity, and so this is the one that.
Well, this would have been an R rating on violence alone. Let's
right.
Let's be
so we
clear.
could have done without it. I'm with you on that.
But I love with her, the thing I really did love about her character is that at the very end of the movie, they're like, okay, we got to keep going. We got to find out what happened with Mike. We got to uncover the rest of these mysteries behind what's going on. And she's like, this is really weird, guys. I'm out of here.
Yes.
Zombies. And, yeah.
I like all of the goofiness about her character. Of like the fact that, or rather, you guys were saying, this is a strange crew, and she actually says, hey, imagine the three of us fighting the forces of evil, because she nails it herself. There's him, middle-aged man. There's the insane murderous kid, and then there's her, who's like a female Black Rambo. Awesome. So I totally love the daring to be different that's going on here. I love it. So, and the fact that, again, you get the impression there could be a million other stories. She's going to go off by herself. I have no doubt that she's going to attract adventure. Don't forget Liz's cop sister, who showed up in one scene in the last movie, went back to the police station, never to be heard from again. I'm sure that she will probably find her way into adventures. So it's like they're just constantly populating these movies with characters that they don't do very much with. But I love this girl. I love the nunchucks too. I think that's pretty awesome.
She's just cool. I agree with Jamie. Like, I felt similarly, but I guess since I've just watched so many horror movies, and like especially like Full Moon Entertainment style horror movies, where that's just a part of it, in the same way that in Friday the 13th, like there's gonna be naked campers, you know.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, and I know that. It's just
like,
because
it's
they
just,
set her up.
But it is weirder at the kind of strange, like we talked about, strange earnestness of Reggie's character. Like I said, it's like your uncle. You're like, oh, man, you know, he is pretty cool, but I don't know. I can't really condone this, you know. But also that scene kind of plays out too. Like it plays out, like, if I remember correctly, like, similarly twice in the movie. We have these weird, like, under the cover kind of vignettes that turn out like,
well, there's the implication that later on that because the tall man brings back the bandits as zombies, and the female zombies as an implication that she was giving him fellatio, which was vile.
That's right.
Yeah. Which is when you were asking about what the hellness is, Jason.
Yes.
That.
You mean in terms of here's an idea and what the hell, let's do it, as opposed to what the fuck is going on.
And the first movie is what the fuck. The second movie is what the hell. This movie is both.
Yeah, I can dig that. There's a hilarious business here that is completely unrealistic, just bullshit nonsense, where Reggie wants to sleep with Rocky. So when they stop at a hotel, he convinces the kid, who, by the way, is, you know, like Newt in Aliens very recently, you know, the other major characters are borrowing from that movie. The kid's resilient, so it's fine. But he says, hey, kid, you sleep in the car because I'm hoping to get lucky. The kid's down with that, and that's fine. And I was thinking, what? This is ridiculous. This is Tall Man universe. All these towns are dead except for the Tall Man shit that he left behind. But he's like, you know what? I'm going in this hotel. You stay in this Barracuda, and that was a point where the humor, the comedy was just, it strained credulity too much. It was nonsense. There was just no way.
This is definitely
if you're really cool. If you're really cool, like you'll sleep in the car. You know, you got it. You get it, right? And he's like, yeah, Reggie, I get it. Like, no, but you know, just stay in the car. You know, it's just so like, oh man,
it's ridiculous. I mean, this is a kid. There's no way that he would do that. You know, but again, I get it. It's comedy. It's not, but. That's the point where the comedy is just too broad. There's no way that Reggie, that character, no matter how lame he is sometimes, the one who took in Mike, there's no way that Reggie would leave this Tim character in the car all night. That's not.
No, that's what's weird. Like I said, it's like your scumbag relative.
Yeah,
I don't know how many
especially
people
when
have
he
that.
knows that there is literally the forces of evil out to get him, with like evil with a capital E. You know, kind of thing.
Yeah, but also, you know, that's what's weird though, right? Because Reggie is so cool when he's cool, and he's kind of like
pervy.
Like pervy. Yeah, exactly. That's perfect. Pervy in ways you're like, wait, but I want to like you more. Pervy bits are weird, you know.
I wouldn't like the pervy aspects of Reggie if I was friends with him, but I have to say I do like them as a sort of feet of clay in a fictional character. You know, because
I like it. I'm down with having his character be like that, and
he's flawed. He's flawed. He's not even as flawed as Ash, though. Like you're talking about, like Ash.
He's also not a
Ash is an asshole. By the time Army of Darkness comes around, Ash is like a straight up asshole. Reggie is a bit sleazy at times, but he generally means well.
Yeah, he's just a lech, which is okay. You know, I think this particular scene is a little out of character, but whatever. We get past it pretty soon because it leads up to the great payoff where Rocky basically ties him up. So
oh, that is a great moment. Like,
anyway, so they hit the road
and
are reattacked by the gang, and that doesn't lead to much except for the most amazing stunts I've seen in this movie. So Tony, tell us about this. What is the deal?
So that was one of the best stories of Phantasm Fest. So somebody asked Coscarelli, if he has one of the balls or if somebody has them. And he goes, oh, well, there's one guy especially who has one of those, the stunt man. So the way that you do the stunt is it drives and it goes up on a pipe, basically. So it basically is, a rail that you go up and over, you go, and then it flips. Well, it ends up that the stuntman really liked Phantasm. Really liked it. He's like, you know what? I'm in a Phantasm movie. I'm going to make this count. So he added like an extra bit of pipe that no one knew. Coscarelli didn't know. Stunt coordinator didn't know. And I think maybe he was perhaps the stunt coordinator as well because he's like a seasoned guy. He's like, I'm going to make this one count. So they plan the stunt. They do the test run. Okay, cool. And he, none of them know that there's this extra bit of pipe. He goes, and you see it, and it travels for so far in the movie.
I've never seen a hearse just flip and fly like this.
No,
never
so
seen
no one on the set, they all were like, holy crap, I bet he's dead. Because evidently you get knocked out. Like when you do a stunt like that, you're probably going to get knocked out. That, the crew rushes over and they bring you out and make sure you're okay, make sure you don't sleep, how much of a concussion you have, et cetera. And they really were like, holy crap, how is he not dead? We've just killed somebody. We don't know what happened. Because they didn't know he added that pipe. So they go over there. They revive him. Oh, he's alive. Oh, he's great. What do you want, man? Like, in the water, whatever. And he goes, I want one of the balls. So throughout his lucid, like, the only thing he wanted, like, he was fine with getting knocked out. He was fine with doing all that. But all he wanted, he's like, done. So he's like, that guy has one of the originals, like, of all the things.
That's a hell of a stunt, man. I mean, it's watching that in the pink. It's pink, so it lights up really well at night. It's amazing. I mean,
yeah.
So
that was one of the best stories. Like that was one of the best things to come out of Phantasm, because it's just such a perfect. I'm gonna make this count, and when you see it, it's up there with the stunt where the guy accidentally flipped in Road Warrior, the guy who flies over the bridge, who was never supposed to do that. That was never supposed to happen. Broke his legs, everything.
Oof.
This guy could have been really bad, because that hearse. A hearse. They cut out stuff to make it lighter than a normal hearse, so they can do the stunt. But it's still a hearse.
Yeah.
Adding that extra bit of
pink hearse is so cool. Like I have to say, I kind of mourned it a little bit when it bit the dust.
You want a big hearse now, don't you?
Yeah.
You want to go buy a hearse?
I don't know. I want to kid ourselves, Jason. I wanted to own a hearse since I was 9.
So yeah, well, if you buy one, you should, be a cool in joke or just homage, I should say, to Paint and Pink. So yeah, right around. By the way, this movie is better constructed also than the last two, as far as having what I would call a very modern structure, where you can feel when you're going into different segments. Now we're at the beginning. Now we're at a point where we're meeting allies. Now we're traveling together. In this segment, they're trying to get closer to the tall man, because it's right around this point where they're camping, and like Jamie says, we return to one of the gags from the first movie, where the tall man loses his hands, and in the first movie, the tall man's fingers could become bugs that tried to kill you. In this one, they up the ante on the same gag, and the tall man attacks them when they're camping, and his hands remain behind. It's because I'm trying to remember why. Oh, well, he disappears through the
Jody somehow manages. Oh no, Reggie, because he knows about the gates, manages to cut the gates, but tall man's hands are the only thing that's made it through, and then the hands. Because there's a whole sequence where he goes in his dream to rescue Mike. And I do have to say, Jody, at that point, has one of the best lines in the entire movie. He's like, where are you? He's like, I don't know, man. Somewhere in your mind.
Yes, exactly.
All that stuff. Bring him back to Green Light stuff is cool.
In fact, actually, let's explain that one in just a second. I just wanted to mention this whole sequence here, where with the hands, is really cool, and it has a lot of goofy. I don't know. This is the slapstick as they're chasing after these little creatures that the hands become. The hands become something like hand lizards. They sort of walk, sort of like a mime would walk his hands, but also like lizards, and they'll bite you and chew on you. It's great stuff.
Well, that's another very Evil Dead-esque
yeah, for sure.
bit.
That totally is. Yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I should mention that where we're headed at this point, in theory, I said there was structure to this one. Where we are at this point is that after the last town that they were in, the trio figure out that there is nearby a thing called the largest Gothic mausoleum in the West Unit.
Yeah. Jason?
Yep.
You've accidentally muted Jamie.
Oh. Well, I think the call got dropped.
Oh, okay.
No, she's online.
I was trying to
there we go.
No,
Hello.
I was trying to do that surreptitiously, by the way.
Sorry. Yeah, I couldn't see the window. Okay, well, awesome. Welcome back, Jamie. I'm sorry we lost you.
That's okay.
Trying to.
I was here. I was listening.
Oh well, I'm so sorry. Anyway, but welcome back. They are at this point headed for a thing called the largest Gothic mausoleum in the Western United States, and it is when they're headed towards that they start communicating a lot more with Jody. And we haven't talked at all about Jody. Who would like to explain, because we haven't talked about this subplot at all, but it's really important. The subplot of Jody's fear and the captured Mike. So who wants to take it on? And I'm happy to let you.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically we get Jody, once we find out that he's actually a ball and he's hanging out with them. Like, they have a Jody.
Not just a good time.
Yeah, and it's black, like it's not silver any longer. They have Jody, hey, my brother is one of these balls, and he hangs out, and he can help direct us towards the tall man.
Such an innovation. That's so great, isn't it? I mean, that's like really creative. It's like, hey, we've had these balls for a couple of movies. What else can happen with them? That's neat. It's neat to see them thinking. Go ahead. Continue.
No, I just think that's,
Well, he
that's
can only defy he's under this, the command of the tall man, and he can only defy the tall man for, his control for so long.
Yeah.
He can't, he's not strong enough, and he can only turn it back into his body that he apparently was able to age even though he had been dead.
Right.
He's now middle-aged Jody, but he didn't make it. He was a teenager he was early 20s when he died, but he can turn back and forth into his form, but he has to save up his energy, so he needs a lot of battery power, a lot of brain power to turn into the human self and actually communicate with Mike. And then he actually ends up communicating with Tim too, because after Mike kind of gets taken on board by the tall man, they keep the ball, and the ball directs them to the mausoleum.
Right. It's so wonderful because, yeah, you're right. There's 4 men on this team, 4 people. There's Rocky. There's a sphere with Jody's brain in it. There's Reggie, the ice cream man, and there's Tim, the murderous little boy. This is a cool team. I mean, this is a neat team.
You call him a murderous little boy. I feel like you should give him a little bit more credit. He's pretty,
he's a survivor.
He catches you off guard in the beginning when they first introduce it, because it's a little creepy. I mean, it gets a little scary. He's wearing this, doll mask in the beginning that's very off-putting. It's creepy. And you think he's almost got to be, one of the tall man's, minions of some sort, because it's just so strange. But at the same point, he is just surviving. He just happens to be really good at kicking ass.
No, you're exactly
and
right.
He's a very knowledgeable kid, and he does seem pretty understanding. He seems to be very mature. He's buried people, he's buried his whole family.
he buries the people that he kills, which is pretty respectful.
And he didn't kill his family. I mean, they show that his own parents, his dad was taken by the tall man, and while his mother and him witnessed it, and then when she goes to investigate and stop the tall man from lifting the dad's coffin into his hearse, she gets pulled in by the dad, who's now like come back and the zombie, and is like, you know, kind of killing and / eating whatever with her. But you know, that's how you find out Tim's been on his own ever since. So, and it's a kid going, I mean, hell, look at, if we want to go back to Mad Max, the priest, or what's it called, the feral child, you know, that kid, you know, he was left on his own. Look how he turned out.
He turned out to be great. He was one of the greatest chiefs of the tribe. So you're right. Okay, I'm sorry. I should not have called him murderous. I apologize. Because I think of this kid really as being part of the tradition of Newt as well. Remember, Newt was a big survivor, and could do, you know, but this is good thinking, you know, because look, you gotta fill in a character here. You gotta have people for Reggie to run around with. So it's very cool that they picked this construct instead of
back to the question of Jodie Bowl, though. I have to say, Jodie Sphere, or whatever. Did anybody else find that incredibly sad?
Oh yeah, that Jodie is a sphere. Sure, yeah. But
conceptually, like the whole idea behind it just makes me really like, this is his existence now, and he only was recently able to break free. So that means for about a decade he was flying around drilling people's brains out.
Right, and he attracts the tall man, so he's constantly on the run. But I mean, this is like a classic. He's Racer X, man. I mean, he's in with the mob up to his eyeballs. He's got to keep on the run. You know, he's never going to be comfortable. This is a classic construct. And
honestly, Jason, you say Racer X. I'm saying this is more like the Wolfman.
Well, okay, I can dig that.
He's because the tall man's always this close to taking him back.
See, I think zombies. I go for zombies in that way, because zombies, that's like why zombies represent like the anxiety, you know, of a culture. And even in your dreams, if you have zombie dreams, usually you're having anxiety. You know, the fact that something is just constantly coming, and no matter what, like you do, it's still coming after you. And even at the end of this movie, the tall man's still coming.
You're
well, this is the best. The tall man, to me, has. I may not think this is the best one, but I do think that the final line the tall man has in this is the most definitive tall man line, which is "It's never over." That always stayed with me. It stayed with me better than anything else about this movie for some reason.
No, you're exactly right. And I don't know. I was just thinking that if this were an ongoing series, you know, like I said, this is a good team, right? In a sense, you know, you could have the series with this team of 4, you know, not have Rocky leave. Although after like 6 or 8 issues, I would go ahead and take Jodie's brain out of that sphere and put it into some sort of walking, talking construct so that he could be like Robot Man, basically. Because why does he need to be in a sphere? I mean, it would just be cool if they innovated something.
Well, the sphere is the icon of Phantasm, so to have a benevolent sphere,
so to be a good sphere,
it's distinct of what Phantasm is.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Also, when we were watching the movie, Drew and I were talking, because I kept thinking about how were you supposed to believe that the tall man had only just suddenly come to the United States, or to come to Earth, or wherever, you know, whatever he is, like suddenly? Was this like recently, or has he been doing this for like all time? And you know, towards towards, you know, and now he's just got all, like, he's managed to get all the other dead bodies, and now he's like, all right, well, we need more dead bodies because I'm out, I took them all, you know. So now he's going after living people. But I'm assuming that we're supposed to believe that he suddenly, you know, it's only been within the last decade or so, right?
It would be cool to
You'll
find
find out
out
more in part 4.
Well, I just
there's a
thought,
picture
okay,
of
so
him in
maybe
part
they'll.
1 that's from Pioneer times. I mean, you see him as like
right.
the sort of Old West Undertaker,
Right.
the picture. So he's been around a while.
So
But
because I was thinking, I was like, is this supposed to be like I felt like the first Phantasm movie had so much metaphor. At least I thought it had so much metaphor. And the second one, not so much. But this one, I keep wondering, the way it is, if it's a commentary on, religion in the masses and the way, we're supposed to believe that there's this being in the afterlife, this omniscient, so hopefully good, benevolent being or what, entity that's going to take us to the light. But what if it was just the tall man? Like that's, if it wasn't something where it was this great vision of what we assume heaven to be, and it ends up being something along the lines of that. I feel like it just really made me think of a lot of was that Dead a Lot, which is the zombie movie where they talk about being in pain and they're smart.
Return of the Living Dead.
Return of the Living Dead, and it kind of reminded me of that, like a different take on death, and the fact that you do see so many of these cities and towns that have all just been like wiped away, and is that supposed to be some sort of take on an economic
I think so.
cause?
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it seems to be like this theme that keeps reappearing throughout the movies.
Yeah.
So
hollowing out. I don't know. So yes, you're exactly right about the notion that this is supposed to be a nightmare about death. What if death is worse than you can possibly imagine? That would be a horrible notion.
Well, what we've now learned in this movie is instead of like what in the first movie where you're turned into a dwarf slave, you're actually turned into a slave twice over. Your
body is
body goes to work in manual labor, and your brain is turned into a killing machine.
Right. That's absolutely right. And so that's really dark. Although because the tone of the movie has changed, the more the reveals they're doing, they're still not making it nearly as sort of tender and depressing as the first movie. And so that is very strange. They're introducing more and more horrible concepts if the characters would stop and slow down and have some depressing moments. That's just not the kind of movie it is. So I'm not complaining.
I will say this. I find what is revealed about Mike to be probably the saddest thing in the entire series. In this movie.
Yeah. Okay, so we should actually go to that, because what happens next is a whole sequence where they finally find their way to the largest Gothic mausoleum in the Western United States, which is where which is just the most the kind of sentence you would only hear in a movie in the Phantasm series. But they find this headquarters for the Tall Man, and that's where the whole final showdown is going to be, because they've got Mike. And Mike is communing with Jodie's fear, there's a lot of action. The action's all great, but I don't think that's what we necessarily want to spend our time talking about. I do want to make one point. Reggie quotes Rudyard Kipling. There's this moment when he says, first of all, he says about Tim, he goes, "Hands off my boy." But there's a moment when he says something like, "When you can keep your cool when the world is going crazy all around you." I can't remember the exact quote, but it's from a Rudyard Kipling poem. And I thought, so Reggie, not only plays guitar and shoots a quadruple shotgun and, serves ice cream, but he also, apparently was an English major. So that was
that's Coscarelli coming, because, he's... these movies are smarter than I think anybody. I mean, I think we're giving them due credit, because we've been talking about them now for weeks. But there's a lot of thought going into this universe, Like these movies have a lot of like Coscarelli, is a smart director. He's a smart filmmaker, and I mean that shows in his other movies too. I mean, especially you look at like John Dies at the End, or which we've done, and Bubba Hotep, which we may be doing here in coming weeks. Those are movies with a lot of they may be pulp, they may be horror, but they have a lot of thought behind them, and I think that's absolutely
yes.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true of the Phantasm films as well.
But go ahead and Drew, if you want to tell us about the reveal about Mike, I think it starts out with a line from the tall man, which is, "You lived in this construct long enough." And how do we find out?
He takes him into a mortuary operating theater. He has a bone saw. He cuts into Mike's head. Mike screams and looks down and realizes he's bleeding the yellow blood like the tall man. And he peels back a little bit of Mike's head to reveal that he has a metal sphere in his head.
Oh my
Meaning
God.
It's either throughout the entire series or maybe, somewhere along the way he's either been turned into one of these creatures, or maybe he's always been. I mean, it's never explained because it's Phantasm, and that's just the way they roll. But
maybe it's explained in the next one. Are you telling me it's not explained in the next one? Is that
Jason? We'll get to Phantasm 4 in due time. All right.
Okay.
The point is, it's never explained here, but it's just so. First of all, talk about this is your hero. This is the main hero throughout this entire film series, and you now realize that this is what's been going on. That he's somehow deeper linked to the tall man than we may have ever suspected, and it just they do this great makeup with him where his eyes suddenly look almost like two little sentinel spheres.
It reminded me of Gary. Oh God, what was the character's name? Anyway, in the Star Trek episode where No Man Has Gone Before.
Yeah. Well, and he knows he can no longer be fully part of this group, and it's just, to me, this is the saddest thing. And that, you're talking about the sadness of the first one, and I get that. That's a more real world sadness in some ways. But this just makes me really, really, really upset for some reason. And I remember, I didn't remember this movie as well as the other two because I don't like it quite as much, so I don't rewatch it. But I remember when I rewatching it this time and now seeing the sequence again, I remember thinking about it when I first saw it when it came out. I remember being kind of sick to my stomach after they revealed that, because I was like, oh my God, how could they do that to Mike? And I still kind of feel that way. It's just dear Lord, how horrible is this?
Right, because he's your hero. He's the one who's been suffering, all of this tragedy, and now we find out an even worse tragedy. It's like in a movie or a series where you have a character who is the innocent who you've been following all along, and then the movie decides to do some great violence to them, and you have to sort of reckon with that. Although I got to admit, that's a common thing to have happen in any long series, where eventually your hero gets captured and tortured, and if it's really exploitative, eventually your female heroes get captured and raped. And that's just a thing that movies do over and over again.
This is sort of you're not actually my enemy, you're just another one of my puppets.
Well, I wouldn't even think about that, but you're totally right. Yes, but then that's okay, because he gets away. He and Jody head out on the road. I mean, and the fact that they do that is because, once more, the tall man is dispatched this time because.
Well, but they do reveal something very important: is when the tall man's body is destroyed, he has a gold sphere in his brain. It's like housing his that just flies into the other dimension and gets him another body. Yep,
that's right. But that means that anytime you kill the tall man, he's out for a short while, giving you time to.
It's just an inconvenience. It's just an inconvenience.
It's fantastic. It's just like the Dracula series. I mean, like I said, every time this guy's in the upset period where he's getting killed, he looks precisely like any time they knock off Christopher Lee in the old Hammer movies. And by the way, the tall man's death, very awesome. They freeze him with liquid nitrogen and in a big freezer, and it's after his skull is completely frozen that golden sphere just goes and like busts out of his skull. That's pretty cool. That is pretty neat. Oh yeah.
And then there's a big fight with the gold sphere in which Rocky. It takes all three of the ragtag bunch of Reggie's Avengers, Reggie's Himikuta Avengers have to defeat the gold ball, and our heroes are scattered to the wind, and then Reggie's like, well, I have to go back in there and see if there's anything that could help Mike. So him and Tim go back in there, and
does Mike and Jody's sphere head off in their spiritual journey, wherever that's going. Rocky heads off into the sunset.
Again, that's great because she's just like, yeah, I'm done.
She's going to go have her own solo series. Imagine in the alternate universe where there are a million comic book series about these characters, she's going to go have her own solo series for a while.
I would watch that. She's awesome.
You know it. Yeah. And that leaves Reggie and the kid who have like 45 seconds left in this movie. They go back into the largest Gothic mausoleum in the western United States and are immediately set upon by
hundreds of sentinel spheres.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
and then the tall man walks out and he's like, "Oh no, it's fine, it's over." And then the tall man, of course, pops up. It's never over. I think that was like that to me is the best ending of any of these movies. Because it's just like you think you can defeat me, but you'll never be able to. I'm always going to have the upper hand. I'm always going to win because I'm the tall man.
Right. And that is the end. That's the cliffhanger. I love that these are cliffhangers. I love that they just beg you to go to the next movie from the very beginning, and
which is weird because they didn't even know that they were going to be getting a scene sequel.
Right. Yeah. It was just a goofy ending, that they wanted to do, but it set up something that they could keep echoing over and over again that becomes this sort of bow or this curtain call that they can do every time.
Well, it's sort of like movie serials.
Yes, precisely. Like, how will they get out of this? Tim just got pulled through a portal.
It's like a really sadistic, really surreal series of movie serials.
Yes. Fantastic. Yeah, Commando Cody. Fantastic. All right, let's get our final thoughts on Phantasm 3, and then we will do any endorsements that anybody has. So, Jamie, would you like to tell us your final thoughts on Phantasm 3?
Yeah, I liked this movie. I liked it more than the second one. I might even say I liked it more than the first one because I spent most of the first one just with my mouth dropped open, just like a what? But this one kind of makes a little more sense. It is, I mean, I say a little more sense. Yeah, throw that around loosely, but it does follow a path, so that's easily to walk down and enjoy, I should say. But it's the pretty, you know, it's got everything you love about the first two and some of the stuff you're not crazy about the first two, but it still has that je ne sais quoi. So I feel like it's, I don't know, it's got a certain something that makes me look forward to watching the next one, because I know the second one, after watching the first one, I was kind of like, I don't know if I'm going to like the second one. And then I watched the second one, and I was like, I didn't really like that much. But this one, I like this one. So I'm excited to see 4.
That's wonderful. All right, Drew, what are your final thoughts? Phantasm 3.
I still think I like Phantasm 2 better, but I like this one a lot. It doesn't have the nostalgia, I guess, because it came out in the 90s and I was a teenager by then. It doesn't just have that deep nostalgia that the first two have, you know, because I came across them when I was a kid, you know, and you know, there's that kid identification, whereas this, you know, I enjoy it, and I think I actually like it more having had this discussion, because I started thinking about it. And I do like that they were somehow able to kind of, again, fuse the sensibilities of the first and second movie into one cohesive tone. Which is, you know, kind of a tough hat trick when you think about it, but they pulled it off. So I like it. I kind of I'm interested in. I haven't seen Phantasm 4 since it originally came out, so I remember feeling sort of lukewarm to that one. So I'll be interested to revisit it. But you know, right now, you know, I'm enjoying going through this series, and this has been a really fun discussion tonight.
Very cool. Tony, how do you think this series is going?
I like this one more after seeing it recently than I remember liking it before, which is really cool. I really enjoy the road trippy parts and the kind of action movie parts that I'd forgotten about. The kid is awesome. Tim is awesome. You know, Rocky's awesome. Reggie's awesome when he's not being kind of pervy, and which is, you know, as much as we made of it, he's actually, you know, quite the action hero for a lot of it.
Yeah.
And dealing with a lot of stuff too, you know. Friends coming back, his friend's brother, you know, who's also his compatriot, he finds out is actually one of the balls. I mean, all that stuff is there. We get, you know, nunchucks. We get more 4-barrel shotgun. We get more Himikuta. We get an insane, you know, Hearst jump that should have never been as insane as it was. I really enjoyed it a lot. I wish 4 was as good as this. I know for a fact that it's not, but, you know, such is the way of the world.
Yeah.
Hopefully, you know, since I haven't revisited in a long time, maybe I'll have the same sort of epiphany. I'm like, hey, that's got cooler bits than I remember. But I do remember coming out of the theater kind of really scratching my head on 4, which was fairly new at the time that I saw it. So, but yeah, I really, really enjoy this movie. It's got a lot of great stuff in it.
Very cool. I'm really liking this movie as we reach this point in the series, because once we realize that the theory I'm going under, generally speaking, once you move into a horror series, you cannot possibly maintain the tone of a standalone horror film. You have to morph into something that comes closer to what this is. And so even though it does this, it's looking for a formula and it's finding it, nevertheless, it's giving us some really creative choices. We have this wonderful female action hero. She's great. She's fun to watch. Reggie is an interesting male action hero. He's different from your expectations, so he's fun. Tim is fun. This is all great. Then their other team member is a black metal ball. That's awesome. There is.
I kind of want to see if there's fan art of the four of them on DeviantArt now.
Yeah,
I'm surprised
I
I like that.
But that's a fantastic idea. We should get Belle D just to draw it for us and say, wouldn't this be awesome? Okay, so that means we got one more, and that's next week. Let us go to endorsements, whatever you might be reading or watching or thinking about over the past week that you think you would like to share with anybody else. Jamie, anything going down?
I actually got to check out the new TV show on Netflix called Love. I believe it's a Netflix original, and it's pretty interesting. It's pretty funny. I know it's considered to be like a dramedy. It's not quite. I always find that dramedies tend to be a little soap opera-esque, and I guess that there's a little bit of it, but it's basically it's kind of the beginnings of a love story, and it's not exactly a romantic or fairy tale romance. It's actually like quite normal, and it kind of shows people's the rawness of starting something new and working through what you already have in your emotional baggage. But the characters are pretty funny and lovable in spite of their own narcissism. So it was.
It's good. I've not seen it, but I've heard it's great.
Yeah, and it's also directed by Steve Buscemi, and it was co-created by Judd Apatow. So I was like, oh, all right, I'll give this a shot. And I watched it, and I liked it. I'm excited for the next season.
Outstanding. Drew, anything you want to lay on us?
Well, speaking of TV shows created by Netflix, we also checked out the second season of From Dusk Till Dawn, which is the TV version of the infamous 1990s vampire stripper epic made by Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino. I recommended the first season last year and said that it was better than it had any right to be. This season is about as good as it needs to be. It doesn't quite hit as high of marks as the first season, and they've moved away from the plot of the original film. So they're now having to make stuff up, which they didn't have to do so much in the first season. But they pull in a lot of good. It's got Danny Trejo in it. It's got Gary Busey and Jake Busey in it. It's got really, really, really good gore and creature effects, which is, I think, the thing that kept me watching through the sort of ham on rye TV horror, aspects of it. That being said, if you're a vampire nut, but you don't go in for the, sort of Vampire Diaries style vampire shows that are on the air these days, this is a nice antidote to that because the vampires are monsters, and they don't shy away from that. They're the antithesis of that in many respects, and I like their take on vampire mythology. It's got a Mesoamerican vein running through it, so it gives it a different flavor. And I also like that it's filmed in Austin, so I like seeing all the Austin.
Wow,
building.
I had no idea. I did not know that at all.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I recommend it. I don't recommend it as highly as the first season, but it's still good fun, and it's still got great creature effects in it.
Outstanding. By the way, one of the things I really like about TV versions of stuff is that if they can last long enough, that point where they start making stuff up is often the point that the show either falls apart or really starts to sing in ways that you never imagined before, because those people are sitting around in a room somewhere and spending more time than any human should thinking about this construct, and suddenly, wild stuff starts happening, and that's pretty neat. So good tip, thank you. I will endorsements for us?
I'm trying to think. I know there was something I missed, so I'll have to post it if I remember. But I will say, we were talking about it before. There's a series at AFS, if you happen to be in Austin listening or surrounding area, that Max, who's been on the show, and Lars, who we've mentioned many times for being awesome, host at the AFS screening room called Savage Gold, where they dig up some fairly deep cut VHS usually movies and screen them. And it's been in the same way that Weird Wednesday was eye-opening. This is also that, like, not for the faint of heart, but really fun. And everybody brings crazy snacks in their snacks, so that's really cool. Check out the AFS, Austin Film Society website, and look up Savage Gold. And if you can come out to one of those, if you're in Austin, it's really, really cool. I really dig it. It's a cool series. I haven't been able to go to as many of them as I wanted. But if you want to see, like I said, some deep-cut, grindhousey cinema, Savage Gold is the, on VHS no less, Savage Gold is where to do that. This past, yesterday was Erotic Rites of Frankenstein, the Jess Franco movie, and Savage Abduction, which had several other names, which is a very nihilistic biker murder plot, crazy movie, in the spirit of like any number of Weird Wednesday movies that kind of have that same thing. So,
outstanding.
Oh, and by the way, Jason, I don't know if you'll be delighted or horrified to know there is now a plush Sinful Dwarf that I guess goes with the DVD or Blu-ray. I've seen it around, and I saw Max his son was playing with it in a photo.
And I'm telling you, Sinful Dwarf, that movie is an endurance test.
Sleazy. Also, also a good story because that's the one Weird Wednesday that, hey coworkers, hey female coworkers, come see a Weird Wednesday.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Oops!
And it's like
Sinful Dwarf. This is probably the worst thing I could ask you to come see as a coworker who knows nothing about me. Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if that's why I didn't last at that company. I mean, I don't know.
You're always the Sinful Dwarf guy. That would be amazing. I doubt it. That was what it was. But there is such a thing now.
No, the Sinful Dwarf. That's a Dutch film, right?
I think so. Yeah.
So,
but now there's a doll.
Yep. So that's pretty deranged. All right. Well, no, but thank you, and I really wish I were in Austin for that. I missed that. Okay. My endorsements are two things. First, we have 1,000. Well, our goal is to get to 1,000 likes by the end of the Don Coscarelli Phantasm series, which may have a bonus episode. So if you haven't liked our Facebook page, come and like us. And please, if you're enjoying the show, leave a review on iTunes because those reviews get populated out to anybody who finds the show, and it helps them find the show. So excited. We're on bleedingcool.com. We're also now on horrormovies.net, and we always want more listeners. So come to the Facebook page, like the Facebook page, and join us there, and we would love to chat and talk.
And tell us about how you like to listen to us while you're doing your chores.
Yeah,
we appreciate that.
It made me kind of think, now that somebody posted, hey, this helps me get through my chores, I'm trying to think, maybe I should find a podcast. What would the podcast for me be that gets me through my chores? I need to discover
Well, I have
that.
one for you this week, actually, Tony.
Okay.
And that is my other endorsement. The Now Playing podcast this week covered something that you and I actually suffered our way through about 10 years ago. The Legend of the Superheroes, the terrible... I know.
Oh, ouch.
So Now Playing podcast actually spends, I'm not making this up, 90 minutes talking about The Legend of the Superheroes, which they can barely believe themselves, actually. And so
that is of a time. All of the humor, if you one to encapsulate that year.
Yeah.
That's a thing right there. Like,
Yeah.
the comedy, every bit of that is definitely, yeah.
That's another endurance test.
Wow.
Not as bad as A Sinful Dwarf, but there is not a laugh in that whole thing. There is not a single chuckle. There is nothing that would make you crack a smile. But this podcast, actually, though, the Now Playing podcast is really funny, and they do a great job of talking about it. So that's my endorsement.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That sounds like I'm sure I have some chores. I'll probably have to see how that works.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate you being on. This was a great conversation, and we can't wait to hear from you. Have a fantastic evening. I'll talk to you guys soon.
Later.
No.